The Chicago Bulls went into last week with 4 games on the schedule, 4 games against sub 500 teams. And the Chicago Bulls went 0-4 over that stretch. And on today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about why the Chicago Bulls crash and burn is real. We're going to preview the game against the Los Angeles Clippers and catch up on the text messages in the mailbag. We're going to get to all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And I said it before, right? There comes a time in every season where you realize how the season is really going to go for your team. It's like a defining run, either positive or negative, that happens over the course of every season, right? Now, some teams, they're just a back and forth team all season long. Some teams that, they have some adversity at the top of the season, and then they end up figuring it out, or vice versa. They end up having a really good stretch at the beginning of the season, and it's all coming crashing and burning by the end. And the Chicago Bulls sit in a team that's done a bit of both over the course of the season. But this recent 4-game stretch by the Chicago Bulls, overall 5-game losing streak as a whole, I think is a perfect example of exactly where the Chicago Bulls really are. The real Chicago Bulls have stood up, and it's time to acknowledge and to just realize where this team is. This, my people, as I said last night a few times, right? It was a little dramatic. I didn't mean it to be that way. I was just trying my best to fight off the crash out gene. This Chicago Bulls team is bad. It just is what it is. This is a bad basketball team. A bad basketball team with some talent. A bad basketball team that is going to look good at times, right? The Bulls on the season are 22nd in net rating, right? They're 16th in offensive rating and 23rd in defensive rating over the entirety of the season. Last 5 games, the offense defense has actually switched. They're actually a middle of the pack defense and a bottom tier offense over the last 5-game stretch, and middle of the pack in both offense and defense over the last 10 games. But with that said, this team is it's not a good team. And I think that you've seen the little bit of identity that the Bulls had earlier in the season where it looked like they had a little bit of identity. The Bulls have never, over the tenure of Billy Donovan, really looked like a team that had a strong identity. But at the beginning of this season, them moving with the quicker pace, shooting more threes, being that team that had the comeback gene was a little bit of an identity. And I think that the Bulls, in a little bit of a way, bought into their own hype. That's throwing them a little bell that I honestly don't think they deserve by saying that, but I do think that's right to a degree, right? That this is a team that it's time to start counting their days. And if the front office is anywhere near a level of competency, I'm not even saying competent, but have a level of competency, that you gotta wake up and smell the coffee of where we are right now. That's it. This team this isn't just a bad stretch. I know there are going to be some Bulls fans that hold out hope, and I commend those Bulls. I would love to be in the place right now thinking, hey, this team is going to be able to pull it back. I've already seen some people, well, if Lonzo was in that game, it goes different for the Chicago Bulls. I don't even know if that's the case because of the offense. Now, of course, Lonzo's presence helped. Make no mistake about it. But this was a team that last night came up against a Portland Trailblazers team and teams over the stretch that just wanted more, right? The Bulls have gone from a very good offense at the start of the season to dropping down to an inefficient mess of an offense, right? Over this 5-game stretch, the Bulls have only cleared their average point per game total twice. Their average 3-point total once. Their average assists total twice, right? So they're not even doing the things that were good, that they were doing well in the beginning of the season. The defense has been bad all season, but we talked about how that's actually kind of gotten better, but in crunch time, it's bad, right? Zach LaVine continues to put on solid statistical nights, but I'll tell you what, Zach LaVine had 27 points last night, and it wasn't the same 27 points we're used to seeing from Zach LaVine, but he did have stretches where he he was the only thing going for the Chicago Bulls. So shout out to him there. And I've already seen some Bulls fans that have gone from earlier. They're trying to now go back to Zach LaVine being a ball hog. I'm sorry. I'm going to be frank here. I think that the Bulls fans that are saying that are just trying to find an excuse. Nobody else on this team is doing anything offensively. Zach LaVine has gone back to his normal volume of offense, not because he's trying to be a ball hog, but because he's actually trying to do something for this team at a time period where nobody else is really giving him anything, except Vooch, right? Patrick Williams' season has been nothing but a shit show. He's now reportedly available for trade for the most that he's ever been in his career. Josh Giddey is also stagnated on offense. He hasn't been what he looked, even the flashes that he showed early in the season. Since the New Year flip, Josh Giddey hasn't been himself. He scored in double digits only 3 times, despite getting 30 minutes per game. I remember when there were some Josh Giddey fans that were saying things like, well, if Josh Giddey got 30 minutes a game, he's been bad since the New Year started. Now, he's a young player. He was already inconsistent. We know that Josh Giddey's a confidence player. Could he come out of that eventually? Yeah, I hope so. But let's be clear here. If we're going to be talking about things honestly, Josh Giddey has been cheeks lately, and bad. It's been bad for Josh Giddey here lately. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Even the biggest Josh Giddey supporters, I think, should be able to be honest in looking at this. Just has not been a good stretch for Josh Giddey, not by any stretch of the imagination. It's been bad. Now, he's not the only one that's been bad. Let's be clear here. A lot of people have been. But over this 5-game losing stretch, for example, Josh Giddey's averaging 6.4 points per game, 8.4 rebounds, 6.2 assists. He's doing that on bad shooting, 23% shooting from the field, and 31% shooting overall from the field. Now, he has chipped in a steal per game. Shout out to him there. But he's averaging a negative plus-minus for my plus-minus people of negative 11.4. And over the last 10 games, negative 5.1. So, I mean, Josh Giddey's just not even been at the level that he was looking like he was going to play at some point in time. But then again, this whole team has largely been disappointing. That is why we are here, right? It's because this whole team has been an utter mess. It's been a mess. And it's a mess that it doesn't look like anybody's cleaning up anytime soon. Now, I will say this, and I've talked about this before, is that if this Bulls team does end up keeping its top 10 pick, which, make no mistake, is very likely, right? If they do keep their top 10 pick and they're able to do so without moving any of their pieces, that actually puts them in a pretty favorable spot, even if they do want to move on from the pieces at that time, because then you know what you have in the tuck. But man, it's been bad. And let me make no mistake about it. Every level of this organization has been bad. Billy Donovan's coaching here lately. I know he says the right things after games. He talks about what's happening and those type of things. But let's just be clear. Billy Donovan has largely been trash coaching-wise as well. It's just been bad, right? And, Billy Donovan, we already known. He's not the coach that's going to come in and elevate a roster. The Bulls need that, right? They need a leader because they don't have one on the court. And I don't know how we're going to get one. There's no guarantee that even if we draft a skilled player that they're necessarily going to have the leadership gene that we're missing with this team. But the crash and burn in this is real. And I want to read a quote here from Zach LaVine. They're slowing us down in the half court. We see it, just got to figure out a way to combat it. On the other end, we're just giving up layups and fouls too much. I would also like to put into that as well, second chance points. The Bulls are giving up way too many second chance points, and it's allowing these teams. Well, again, that's an effort stat, though. I look at that as effort. This Bulls team is missing so much effort. We're missing the effort. We're missing the execution. This team went from looking like, at least the one thing that we were talking about the first 15-ish games of the season was that the Bulls offense was legit. The Bulls offense was good. Right? Now, it had its shortcomings. Half court was being one of those. And I said it at that time, right? Is that teams start figuring other teams out as the season goes on. And the Bulls got figured out because teams now know you blitz them in the half court. You force them to have to actually run some sets on you. And at that point in time, the Bulls are barbecue chicken. They may still put up some numbers, but it's not the efficiency, and it's not like it's insurmountable for the other teams to come back in and combat it. I've given Billy Donovan credit before by saying that Billy Donovan, the way that he was able to actually adjust this team, okay, it's admirable. I can give you some credit on that one. But the Bulls have fallen down now to they're out of the top 10 now, right at that top 10 as far as three-point shooting percentage. We were top of the league earlier in that. We're still the second team as far as three-point shooting attempts. We're only taking 7 less three-point shooting attempts than the Boston Celtics. They take 49, we take 42. But the difference is that the Boston Celtics hit it better, right? And they actually have a half-court offense, and they have a defense. This is a Chicago Bulls team that has fallen back into the middle of the pack, and the one thing that it looked like it could be a standout on, and that was, simply put, shooting the ball, offense, pace. Those type, they're still towards the top of the league in pace, but if you're just running around and not doing anything efficiency, you're just getting cardio in with shots. And the chances that this team turns this around by the end of the season is just not likely. It's just not likely. Now, they can improve with some things, absolutely. But again, if we are objectively looking at what this team is, it's not a good basketball team, and it's not a team that's executing at the level that you think anything's going to improve on. And then we got the health concerns. Coby White, who limped off the court. Billy Donovan said he didn't play late in the game yesterday because he didn't like the way Coby White was moving. Coby White's been dealing with that ankle injury since he came back. I'm not throwing that to any excuse on his performance because we've seen him perform well, right? We've seen him take less shots and be more efficient. But now you have the chance that Coby White's probably going to sit out tonight's game against the Los Angeles Clippers, especially if, with the travel, with him limping off the court now, there's a chance that nothing's been announced as of yet, so don't let me be the one to make you think he's not going to play. But I'll say this overall, the Bulls, and there's no trade saving this. This just is what it is. If anybody's holding out hope that the Bulls are going to, and this is why earlier in the season, where people were like, well, if we're not getting such and such back for a trade, that's not the point. If the Bulls were to trade Vooch, Patrick Williams, Zach LaVine, Lonzo Ball, the point of those trades aren't to get some team get some player that drastically ups your ceiling. No, it's to take advantage of the market that they have now. But then again, it seems like that's not going to happen. I've said it before. The best case scenario, it seems like, is that the Bulls, the most likely scenario is that the Bulls aren't going to do anything at the trade deadline. That is the most likely scenario. Now, the Bulls are also likely to keep their pick. The one problem with the Chicago Bulls is that they sit at 9th, right? So they can drop as low as 13th, because they can drop 4 spots. And it only takes them dropping 2 spots for them to lose their draft pick, which, at this point, it is what it is. If they lose it, they lose it. If they keep it, they keep it, right? That's something for them to look at. But this team overall has been a team that's been disappointing, depressing, and it's not been good. It just hasn't been good. So, overall, would I love to be able to say that this team has a path to improve? Yes, I would love to say that. But I'm not going to Jerry Reinsdorf you and try to sell you on something that clearly is not going to happen. This team is going to continue to struggle. And this team, all the doubts surrounding this team have come out and have been proven true. And, as much as people hate on Billy Donovan, understandably so, I want to say, Billy Donovan has been very honest in the fact of where this team is, how he views this team, what the shortcomings are going to come, and it's all come to fruition. Every single thing about it. So it's just a tough go of it all. That this team is just not going to be one of those teams that are able to pull out of this. They're just not. They're not. This is a bad basketball team with no direction. No, it's just not. It's not developing its young players right. We got bad coaching. We got a questionable roster that has some talent, but the fit there is questionable. And it seems like now one of the most concerning things about it, if you look at those players, you look at their eyes, you look at what they're doing, you look at their body language, they seem now to believe that they can't get out of it. And that's worse than any fan thinking it, because once the players lose that momentum, once they lose that fire, once they consistently get outworked, it's very rare that thing is corrected and course corrected. And it doesn't seem like that's what's going to happen for this Bulls team. I would love to be wrong on that, but I got to be honest. And right now, this looks like a Bulls team that season is absolutely cooked. That's what it looks like. And we'll see what comes out of it. Now, the Bulls do have a game tonight against the Los Angeles Clippers, and this is going to be a tough game. I want to be clear here. This is going to be a tough game. The Clippers faced off last night against the Los Angeles Lakers, and you look at Kawhi Leonard in that game, 19 points, 9 of 13 shooting. His defense was back. Also 21 points from Zubac, 21 points from Harden, 22 points from Norman Powell. Now, this is a team that also has a bench that is productive, not necessarily the big-time scorer coming off that bench, but they are productive. Another former Bull, Derrick Jones Jr., is starting for that team. But then when you look at the numbers for the Clippers, over the last 5 games, they have the number 1 net rating in the NBA at plus 18.6. That is ridiculous. They also have the 13th best offense at offensive rating at 118.2. They have the number 1 ranked defense over the last 5 games at a defensive rating of 99. A true shooting percentage of 60%. Effective field goal shooting percentage of 56%. They don't turn the ball over. They get rebounds. They're 7th in the league in rebounding percentage. This is going to be, and 2nd in the league in steals for a Bulls team that has been turning the ball over like crazy. This Clippers team right now on paper is everything that the Bulls have been struggling at is where the Clippers have been strong at. This game tonight could be a massacre. And we are in a real chance and a real possibility that the Chicago Bulls losing streak reaches double digits if they don't stand up and surprise and beat one of these teams coming up. The Bulls passed all the games that were supposed to be easier, and they lost those games. Now you're coming up against a stretch of teams that just simply put are going to be, if you had difficulty beating 4 straight teams with below 500 records, man. And for everybody that was talking about the Bulls having the second easiest schedule in the league, now because of their record, because of their play, it's gone up. So now they have the 14th toughest schedule in the league remaining for the rest of the way of this season. And this is why when people were screaming about, we got the second easiest schedule, this is where we're going to make a run. Ha ha. When have the Chicago Bulls ever done anything like that consistently? This losing streak can reach epic proportions for the Chicago Bulls. Now, one thing that would add and provide is more clarity leading into the trade deadline. But if you're looking between now and that trade deadline that people are talking about, we got the Clippers tonight, the Golden State Warriors on Thursday, the Philadelphia 76ers on Saturday, the Denver Nuggets on Monday, the Boston Celtics next Wednesday. Then we got Toronto, Detroit, Miami, and then that puts us in the trade deadline. This is not only an important stretch for the Chicago Bulls, this is the stretch. This is it. Between now and the trade deadline, this is what it's all built around. How much has AK learned? How much has AK seen? How much has AK woken up? How much does his team dig in and fight in? Because to tell you what, 5-game losing streak right now, you look at those next 5 games, maybe the Philly game because they're playing like shit, those are all games that the Bulls could easily lose. Now, with typical Chicago Bulls fashion, they could very well come in and win 3 out of these next 4 or 5 games because that's what the Chicago Bulls do. They do some shit that we don't see coming, and it restores hope for the fans that want to be hopeful anyway. But this is about to be a difficult stretch for this team. And I can't wait to see how they do it. And I'll be covering it right here on Chicago Bulls Central because that's what I do. Late games for the next 2 games. We got a 9:30 Chicago start time tonight, a 9 o'clock Chicago start time on Thursday before we kind of get back to kind of normal schedule at that point in time. But this is about to be difficult, y'all. And we're about to be up late talking Chicago Bulls. And all I can say is let's hope we get some dubs. Maybe. But with that said, I want to dive into this. I already came into today planning. We do voicemails on Saturdays and Sundays. We do mailbags on Saturdays and Sundays. But the overflow, it was all text messages that weren't able to get to. So I want to get to some of those today. This first text message, this one's from the 662. And they say this. What up, Haize? Just a thought. Why hasn't trading Giddey's expiring contract been spoken about? Do you think his contract or his play has any trade value? All right. So why hasn't Josh Giddey expiring contract been spoken about? Because nobody's going to trade for Josh Giddey right now. People were surprised that the Bulls traded for Josh Giddey. His value is even lower now. Part of that's on the Bulls. Part of that's on him. And at this point, nobody's going to be trading for Josh Giddey. So no, the Bulls are not going to trade Josh Giddey. I think if he was playing better, maybe. But then again, I don't think the Bulls even want to trade Josh Giddey, if I'm being 100% honest with you. I think when the Bulls made the trade for Josh Giddey, they are committed to seeing what this 22-year-old, 23-year-old can turn into. Now, I've said earlier in the show that his play recently has been bad. So does that change some things? Absolutely. That changes some things at the negotiation table. Could it end up that the Bulls' offer and Josh Giddey's offer aren't aligned, and then they try to do a sign and trade or he signs an offer sheet with another team? Yeah, those are all probable outcomes. But nobody's trading for Josh Giddey right now, not leading into the trade deadline, even with his contract being expiring because he's a restricted free agent. It's just not going to happen. So, and ultimately, I think that Josh Giddey is going to be here with the Chicago Bulls. and it just is what it is there. All right, let's get into the next text message. This one's from the 773. They say, hey, Haize, just watch your latest video on the Bulls. Appreciate you. My biggest stance was getting rid of LaVine or Vooch. Start the season with young players and play out the season. Keeping those two only makes people think that this team can be good. Poorly ran organization. Keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, listen, here's what I'll say with that. I think everybody understands how poorly the Chicago Bulls team is ran, right? I don't think that that's anything that people are trying to convince themselves that we know that they're ran bad. But the thing is, you have to have a trade partner. You can't just trade to trade, right? And unfortunately, there weren't a lot of teams that were biting on what the Chicago Bulls had to offer, even despite them playing better. We can always just say, hey, trade these guys and do this, but you have to have a partner. And again, I am not at the point, and I don't feel a lot of Bulls fans should be at the point either, that they're willing to just jettison off Zach and Vooch just to say that they made a trade. I don't think that should be done, in my personal opinion. So because of that, I don't want to see the Chicago Bulls just trade them. I do like the fact that they are looking and saying, no, we have this value for these players. We want this value to be met. But at the same time, you got to pick a direction eventually. And we'll see. Vooch is expiring next year. It'll be another year off Zach LaVine's, what makes his trade kicker a little bit less. We'll see what ultimately ends up happening with that. All right, the last text message is from Simeon Peterson. He says this. Hey, I'm Simeon. I'm a big Bulls fan. I watched your video about why the Bulls are not going to be tanking. I think that because they have just been stuck in mediocrity for so long now, I want to see some players be dealt away at the upcoming trade deadline. Then they can get some valuable assets to start heading into the rebuilding process and tank to get some high draft picks. This is also maybe they will be competitive someday. Here's the thing. They're not, I've said it before. This is not going to be a team that ever tanks. This is not ever going to outwardly tank. If they move off of talent, it's going to be because they got talent in. As I said, if they do keep their top 10 pick this year, it'll then be so they can then trade some other, they may be open to trade some other players at the position. For example, if they draft a guard, if that's who's best on the board, they're moving somebody. Whether it be Zach, Coby, or Isles, somebody's getting moved. Eventually, I'm not saying right when they draft, but eventually probably by the end of that season or maybe the next season when that young player shows that they're stepping up. But I don't think, I get it. I get why people say that they want to see this team make a trade. But again, you can't will a team to do something that it's not going to do. This is not a team that wants to tank. Thus, they're not going to tank. That's just my opinion. But guys, thank you for the text messages. I'll do a better job at reading off, mixing between text messages and voicemails. I know not everybody feels comfortable leaving their voice, and that's perfectly fine. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.